The massive space station called Unity Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most cities and home to the Galactic Council. Inside its metal halls, representatives from over 200 different alien species gathered for what might be their final meeting. The war was going badly, very badly. Admiral Keth Varani stood at the center of the Great Council chamber. His blue scales caught the light from the holographic displays that surrounded him. Each display showed another lost world, another dead system, another billion people who would never see their families again. The Void Swarm had been killing everything in its path for 3 years now. Nothing could stop them. The swarm was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were not really individual creatures, but parts of one giant mind that stretched across space. When they found a world with life on it, they would land and eat everything. The plants, the animals, the people, everything became part of the swarm. Then they would move to the next world and do it again. Varani looked around the chamber at the faces of his fellow military leaders. General Thoric Ironhide of the Kragnari sat with his massive arms crossed. His people were famous warriors who had never lost a war until now. Captain Zexathala of the Mindari fleet kept her 4 eyes focused on the tactical displays. Her species could think faster than computers, but even they could not find a way to win this war. The truth was simple and terrible. Every battle plan they tried failed. Every weapon they built was not strong enough. Every strategy they developed was countered by the swarm within days. The enemy learned from every fight and became stronger, while the council forces grew weaker with each loss. Counselor Ixithera rose from her crystal chair. Her people were made of living rock and could live for thousands of years. She had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations, but never anything like this. Her voice sounded like wind through stone caves when she spoke. We have tried everything we know. Our best scientists have created new weapons. Our greatest generals have planned perfect battles. Our bravest soldiers have fought until the end. But still we lose. Still they come. Still our people die. There is only one option we have not tried. A heavy silence filled the chamber. Everyone knew what she meant, but no one wanted to say it. Earth. The humans. The violent little species that lived on one small world and spent all their time fighting each other. Most council members thought humans were too primitive to help with anything important. They had no energy shields. Their weapons used explosions instead of lasers. They had not even learned to live in peace with their own kind. General Thoric stood up. His voice was deep and angry. Those barbarians know nothing about real war. They fight like animals over scraps of land and drops of oil. We are facing an enemy that can destroy stars, and they want to help us with chemical explosives and metal bullets. It is madness. But Captain Zexthala was already accessing the classified files about human military encounters. Her species processed information very quickly, and she had been thinking about this possibility for weeks. The data was disturbing. In the few times council ships had met human vessels, the humans had won every single engagement. Not just won, but dominated completely. The humans had ships that looked like weapons instead of tools. They moved in formations that seemed designed only for attack. When they fought, they showed no mercy and took no prisoners. Council observers had called them savage and uncivilized, but they had also called them terrifyingly effective. Admiral Varani looked at the newest battle report. Another star system had gone dark while they were talking. Millions more lives lost. How many more would die while they debated their pride? He had sworn an oath to protect the people of the galaxy. That oath meant more than his dignity. We are dying. Our fleets are broken. Our worlds are burning. If there is even a small chance that these humans can help us, then we must try. Pride will not bring back the dead. Honor will not save the living. Only victory matters now. The debate continued for hours. Some species argued that asking humans for help would make them look weak to other enemies. Others worried that humans might demand too much in return for their aid. A few suggested that humans might be just as dangerous as the swarm if they became too powerful. But the displays around them kept updating with new losses. More worlds consumed, more fleets destroyed, more civilians dead. The math was simple and brutal. At their current rate of loss, the council would be completely destroyed within 6 months. Maybe less. Counselor Ixthera called for a vote. The chamber filled with different sounds as each species indicated their choice in their own way. Some spoke words, others changed colors, and a few made musical tones. When it was finished, the result was clear. By the smallest possible margin, the council had decided to contact Earth. Admiral Varani felt relief and terror in equal measure. Relief that they were finally doing something different. Terror at what they might unleash. The humans had rejected council membership 50 years ago. They had made it clear they wanted to be left alone. What would they demand in exchange for help? What price would they ask for saving the galaxy? The fastest council ship was prepared for the journey to the Sol system. Ambassador Vexhai was chosen to make contact because his species was known for diplomacy and careful speech. His mission was simple in words but complex in practice. Find the humans. Explain the situation. Ask for help. Try not to start another war. As the ship departed Unity Prime, Admiral Varani watched it disappear into hyperspace. He had made many difficult decisions in his long military career, but none felt as dangerous as this one. They were asking the most violent species in known space to help them fight the deadliest enemy they had ever faced. If the humans said yes, everything would change. If they said no, everything would end. The fate of the galaxy now rested in the hands of a species that most council members considered barely civilized. But as another star system went dark on the tactical display, Varani realized that civilization had not saved them. Maybe it was time to try something else. Maybe it was time to try war the way humans understood it. The council ship Harmony's voice dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Ambassador Vexhai stood on the bridge looking at the small yellow star that humans called the Sun. Around it orbited several worlds, including the third planet where humanity lived. It looked so ordinary from this distance. Hard to believe such a violent species came from such a peaceful-looking place. Captain Telmara activated the communication systems and began broadcasting on all frequencies. This is the Council vessel Harmony's voice requesting peaceful contact with Earth authorities. We come seeking dialogue on matters of mutual interest to all species in this galaxy. Please respond. The response came faster than expected. Almost instantly, space around them began to shimmer and twist. Ships appeared from nowhere. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Within minutes, over 200 human warships surrounded the Council vessel in perfect military formation. They had been completely invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. Ambassador Vexhai felt his breathing tubes constrict with fear. His species had been traveling space for thousands of years, and he had never seen cloaking technology this advanced. The human ships looked nothing like council vessels. Where alien ships were smooth and curved, human ships were all angles and edges. They looked like they were built for one purpose only: war. A human voice came over the communication system. It was calm and controlled, but carried an undertone of authority that made everyone on the bridge stand straighter. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Force. You are in restricted space. State your business clearly and prepare to be boarded for inspection. The ambassador quickly explained their mission while trying not to sound desperate. Within an hour, a human shuttle docked with their ship. Admiral Morrison came aboard with a small team that moved like professional soldiers. The admiral was tall and lean with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. His uniform was simple but well made. Morrison listened to their story without interruption. Commander Lisa Park, his aide, recorded everything while asking detailed questions about swarm capabilities and tactics. The humans showed no emotion as they learned about the billions of dead civilians and destroyed worlds. To them, it seemed like just another military briefing. When the ambassador finished speaking, Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he began asking questions that made the aliens uncomfortable. How many ships did the swarm have? What were their typical attack patterns? How did they communicate across space? What happened to council commanders who tried unconventional tactics? The answers revealed a disturbing pattern. Every time council forces tried something new, the swarm adapted quickly and turned the tactic against them. But Morrison noticed something the aliens had missed. The swarm always adapted in the same way. They had patterns that could be predicted and exploited by someone who understood military thinking. Ambassador Vexhai tried to explain how advanced the Council's military science was. They had weapons that could destroy planets, ships that could cross the galaxy in days, computer systems that could calculate 1 million battle scenarios in seconds. Surely the humans could see that their primitive technology would be useless against such an enemy. Morrison smiled for the first time since coming aboard. It was not a pleasant smile. Your technology is impressive. Your tactics are sophisticated. Your strategies are elegant. That is why you are losing. You fight like scientists trying to solve a puzzle. The swarm fights like predators trying to survive. We fight like predators trying to kill. The human admiral walked to the holographic display showing the war zone. He studied the tactical situation with the eye of someone who had seen many battlefields. The aliens watched nervously as he pointed out weaknesses in their defensive lines and flaws in their deployment patterns, things their own generals had missed. Morrison turned back to face the ambassador. His expression was serious and slightly dangerous. "We will help you, but there are conditions. First, all Council forces in the war zone will be placed under human command. Second, we will use whatever tactics we deem necessary to win. Third, you will not question our methods even if they seem brutal or wasteful." The ambassador's species could change colors to show emotion, and right now he was shifting through several shades of alarm. Complete military command was unthinkable. No single species had ever controlled Council forces. The political implications alone could destroy the alliance. But the alternative was the extinction of all life in the galaxy. Commander Park stepped forward with a datapad in her hands. She had been calculating numbers while the others talked. Based on current loss rates and swarm expansion speed, the Council had approximately 4 months before total collapse, maybe less if the enemy accelerated their attacks. Time was running out fast. Morrison crossed his arms and waited for an answer. The humans had made their offer. Take it or leave it. They would not negotiate or compromise. Either the Council wanted to win badly enough to accept human leadership, or they could continue losing on their own. Ambassador, HFY thought about all the species representatives back at Unity Prime. They would be outraged by these demands. Some might even withdraw from the alliance rather than serve under human command. But dead species could not be outraged. Extinct civilizations could not withdraw from anything. The ambassador activated his emergency communication system to contact the Council directly. The debate was brief but intense. Several species threatened to leave immediately. Others demanded guarantees about human behavior. A few wanted detailed explanations of human military doctrine before agreeing to anything. But Admiral Morrison cut through all the political discussion with a simple statement. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, Earth withdraws this offer permanently. We have our own worlds to defend and our own people to protect. We will not waste time arguing while your enemy grows stronger. The vote was closer than before, but desperation won over pride. The Council agreed to the human terms. Morrison nodded once and spoke into his communicator. Alert the fleet. We deploy in 46 hours. Full war configuration. Tell them we are going hunting. As the human admiral prepared to leave, Ambassador HFY asked the question that had been bothering him. How do you know you can defeat an enemy that has crushed every force sent against it? Morrison paused at the airlock door and looked back. His answer was simple and terrifying. Because we are not trying to defeat them. We are trying to exterminate them. There is a difference. Your people fight to win battles. We fight to eliminate threats. When we are finished, the swarm will not retreat or surrender or negotiate. They will simply cease to exist. The human shuttle departed and the Council ship was left alone among the slowly dispersing human fleet. Ambassador HFY watched the alien warships disappear back into their cloaking fields. In 48 hours, they would arrive at the front lines. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humans went to war. Exactly 48 hours after the meeting at Earth, space around the frontline defense station began to ripple and bend. Council observers watched their sensors with growing amazement as the human fleet materialized from nothing. Ship after ship appeared until over 5,000 human warships filled the space around them. Admiral Morrison's flagship was a massive vessel called the USS Retribution. It was twice the size of the largest Council ship and covered in weapon ports that pointed in every direction. When alien officers came aboard for the command briefing, they were shocked by what they saw. Every corridor was designed for battle. Every room had emergency armor plating. Even the conference room had mounted weapons. Captain Ryan Torres of the battleship USS Vengeance gave the alien commanders a demonstration of human weapons technology. Their energy shields were weaker than Council versions, but their kinetic weapons were devastating. Massive railguns that could punch through any armor, nuclear torpedoes that could crack a moon, particle beam arrays that could melt asteroid fields. But the most disturbing weapons were the biological ones. Captain Torres showed them containers filled with engineered viruses designed to attack the swarm's hive mind communication system. chemical weapons that would dissolve swarm bioships from the inside, nanomachines that could replicate themselves using enemy tissue as raw material. General Thorek Ironhide of the Kragnari was disgusted by these weapons. His people believed in honorable combat between warriors. The idea of using disease and poison as weapons violated everything he stood for. He demanded to know how humans could create such horrible things. Colonel Maria Santos answered him with cold logic. We have been at war with someone or something for our entire history. Every weapon you can imagine we have built and used. Every tactic you can think of we have tried and improved. Every rule of war you follow we have broken when necessary. That is why we are still alive and why we will win this war. The human military briefing continued with tactical presentations that made the alien officers increasingly uncomfortable. Humans did not just plan to defeat the swarm. They planned to completely destroy them. No prisoners would be taken. No mercy would be shown. No quarter would be given. The enemy would be eliminated down to the last organism. Captain Zex Thala of the Mindari tried to argue for more civilized approaches. Her species valued intelligence and careful planning above brute force. Surely there was a way to defeat the swarm without becoming monsters themselves. The humans could use their superior technology to find a peaceful solution. General Alex Chen pulled up holographic images from swarm attack sites, dead worlds where every living thing had been consumed, cities where millions of people had been turned into swarm biomass, children's playgrounds converted into feeding pools for alien larvae. He looked directly at the Mindari captain when he spoke. The swarm does not negotiate. It does not retreat. It does not show mercy to anyone, including children and civilians. It exists only to consume and reproduce. You can call us monsters if you want, but we are monsters who fight other monsters, and we are very good at it. Morrison took control of the briefing again and activated a three-dimensional display of the current battle zone. He had spent the last 2 days studying every engagement between Council forces and the swarm. His analysis revealed patterns that the aliens had missed because they were too civilized to recognize them. The swarm hive mind had one critical weakness. It was designed for efficiency, not creativity. When faced with unexpected tactics, it took time to adapt. But Council forces never used truly unexpected tactics because they followed rules of war that limited their options. Humans had no such limitations. Morrison outlined the human battle plan. It was complex, brutal, and completely unlike anything the Council had ever attempted. They would use false retreats to lure swarm forces into traps. They would sacrifice entire ships as decoys. They would target civilian swarm infrastructure to disrupt their logistics. They would fight without honor because honor was a luxury they could not afford. Commander Nick Carter stepped forward to explain the special operations component of their strategy. Human Marines would board swarm bioships and plant explosive charges at critical structural points. They would use close combat weapons designed specifically for fighting in contaminated environments. They would show the enemy what human soldiers could do when they fought without restraint. The alien officers listened with growing horror and admiration. They had never seen such detailed planning for total warfare. Every possible scenario had been considered. Every weakness had been identified and targeted. Every advantage had been calculated and prepared for. It was like watching a machine designed purely for destruction. Morrison assigned roles to each Council fleet based on their species' natural abilities. The Kragnari would provide heavy assault ships because their warriors were fearless in direct combat. The Mindari would handle tactical coordination because they could process information faster than computers. The Zelthians would manage logistics because they were naturally organized and efficient. But the humans would lead every major engagement. Their ships would be the first to attack and the last to retreat. Their soldiers would take the most dangerous missions. Their commanders would make the hard choices that alien leaders could not bring themselves to make. They would bear the moral weight of what had to be done. Captain Torres brought up the final element of their strategy: psychological warfare. The swarm hive mind was designed to learn from every encounter, so the humans would teach it to be afraid. Every battle would be more brutal than the last. Every victory would be more complete. Every defeat the swarm suffered would be turned into a lesson in human cruelty. Admiral Morrison closed the briefing with a warning to his new alien allies. The war they were about to fight would change them all. They would see things that would give them nightmares. They would do things that would haunt them forever. But they would win because winning was the only thing that mattered. As the alien officers returned to their ships, they carried with them new orders and new fears. They had wanted human help to win the war. Now they realized they had gotten something much more dangerous. They had allied themselves with a species that understood war better than any other, a species that would do whatever it took to achieve victory. The combined fleet began moving toward the next predicted swarm attack. Intelligence suggested the enemy was planning their largest assault yet against a heavily populated system. It would be the perfect place to test human military doctrine against the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever known. In the weapon bays of human ships, soldiers loaded ammunition that had been banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. In the laboratories, scientists made final adjustments to viruses that would make the swarm's own biology turn against it. In the command centers, officers planned tactics that would have been considered war crimes in any other conflict. The swarm had consumed 47 star systems and killed billions of innocent people. They had shown no mercy to children, no respect for surrender, and no understanding of anything except hunger. Now they would learn what happened when they tried to eat a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to kill efficiently. The war was about to change. The galaxy would soon discover that humans were not just another species with ships and weapons. They were predators who had turned warfare into an art form, and they were very eager to show their new alien friends exactly what that meant. The Kepler station system was home to 12 billion people, spread across 4 different worlds. It was also the location of the largest military supply depot in the Outer Rim territories. Council intelligence predicted that the swarm would attack within days with their biggest fleet yet assembled. Over 10,000 bioships were moving toward the system, in a formation that looked like a living storm cloud. Admiral Morrison studied the tactical displays aboard his flagship. The enemy was using standard swarm attack patterns with some new variations that showed they were adapting to recent Council tactics. But they were still thinking like a hive mind focused on efficient resource consumption. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The combined human and Council fleet took positions throughout the system. But instead of forming traditional defensive lines, Morrison scattered his forces in a pattern that looked random to alien observers. Council commanders worried that the humans were making a terrible mistake that would let the swarm divide and destroy them. Captain Kate Hudson commanded the human attack group from her heavy cruiser, USS Devastator. Her ships looked like predators waiting to strike. Every weapon was charged and ready. Every system was optimized for maximum destruction. Her crew had trained for this moment their entire careers, and they were eager to finally fight an enemy worthy of their skills. When the swarm fleet entered the system, they immediately began their standard consumption pattern. Bioships moved toward populated worlds while support vessels started harvesting asteroids and gas clouds for raw materials. Their formation was perfect for overwhelming traditional defenders but completely wrong for fighting humans. Morrison gave the order to begin Phase 1 of their attack plan. 12 human ships broke away from the main fleet and charged directly at the swarm formation. To alien observers, it looked like a suicide run by vessels that were hopelessly outnumbered. The ships fought briefly and bravely before being overwhelmed and captured by swarm boarding parties. Council commanders watched in horror as the human vessels were dragged into the heart of the enemy fleet. General Thorek demanded to know why Morrison had wasted ships and lives on such a pointless gesture. The human admiral just smiled and activated a countdown timer on the main tactical display. The captured ships had not been crewed by humans at all. They were automated drones filled with the most dangerous biological weapons Earth had ever created, viruses designed to disrupt hive mind communication, bacteria that would consume swarm biomatter and convert it into toxic waste, nanomachines that would spread through their entire fleet like a technological plague. When the weapons activated, the effect was immediate and devastating. Swarm ships began convulsing as their biological systems turned against them. Communication between vessels broke down as the hive mind network was flooded with false signals. Thousands of bioships started attacking each other as corrupted data made them identify fellow swarm units as enemies. Captain Hudson chose that moment to lead the main assault. Her battle group emerged from behind a gas giant where they had been hiding and struck the confused enemy fleet from an unexpected angle. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, while swarm vessels struggled to respond to orders that were being scrambled by the biological weapons. The human attack was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They targeted the largest bioships first, using nuclear torpedoes to crack their hulls and spill their contents into space. When swarm fighters tried to respond, they found human interceptors waiting for them with weapons specifically designed to destroy organic armor and living tissue. Commander Nick Carter led the boarding assault on the swarm command vessels. His Marines wore environmental suits that protected them from biological attacks, while carrying weapons that were banned by every civilized species. Flamethrowers that burned at temperatures hot enough to melt metal, explosive charges that could destroy an entire ship section, chemical sprays that dissolved organic matter on contact. The Marines fought through corridors lined with living tissue and breathing walls. Swarm defenders tried to stop them, but human soldiers had trained specifically for this kind of combat. They moved through the bioships like a disease, destroying everything they touched and leaving nothing behind that could regenerate or adapt. Lieutenant Ben Thompson planted the final charges in what appeared to be the central nervous system of a massive swarm queen ship. The organic structure pulsed with alien life and seemed to watch him with thousands of eyes embedded in the walls. He felt no pity as he activated the nuclear demolition device that would turn the entire vessel into radioactive dust. Outside in space, Captain Hudson coordinated the systematic destruction of the enemy fleet. Human ships worked in groups of 3, with each group assigned to eliminate specific types of swarm vessels. They showed no mercy to enemies who tried to surrender, and took no prisoners from ships that attempted to retreat. The Council forces watched in amazement as the largest swarm fleet ever assembled was torn apart by human tactics they had never imagined. In less than 6 hours, over 8,000 enemy ships were destroyed with minimal human casualties. The few swarm vessels that tried to escape were hunted down and eliminated before they could report back to the hive mind. When the battle ended, Kepler Station was safe and the local swarm threat was completely eliminated. But the human victory had come at a cost that alien observers found disturbing. Entire sections of space were now contaminated with biological weapons that would kill any living thing that entered them. The humans had poisoned the battlefield to ensure their enemies could never return. Admiral Morrison addressed the combined fleet with typical human directness. This was just the beginning. The swarm would learn from this defeat and adapt their tactics for the next engagement. But humans would adapt faster and hit harder each time. The war would escalate until one side was completely destroyed. General Thorick approached the human admiral after the briefing. His species had a deep respect for successful warriors, and he wanted to understand how humans had achieved such a complete victory. Morrison's explanation was simple and terrifying. We did not try to defeat them. We tried to exterminate them. When you fight to kill rather than win, you use different tactics. The alien commanders returned to their ships with new respect for human military capabilities and new fears about human moral limitations. They had wanted help winning the war against the swarm. They had not expected to witness the complete annihilation of an enemy force using weapons and tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. As the combined fleet prepared to move to the next battle zone, word of the victory at Kepler Station spread throughout the galaxy. For the first time in 3 years, the swarm had suffered a major defeat. But the victory had been achieved by methods that made many council species uncomfortable. They were winning the war, but at what cost to their souls? Captain Hudson stood on her bridge looking at the debris field that had once been the most dangerous enemy fleet in known space. Her weapons officers were already preparing for the next engagement, while her intelligence teams analyzed captured swarm data. The humans were just getting started, and the enemy had no idea what was coming for them. In the depths of space, the surviving swarm forces received reports of the disaster at Kepler Station. For the first time in their species' history, they felt something they had never experienced before: fear. The galaxy had found predators more dangerous than they were, and those predators were hunting them. The swarm's retreat to their core systems was not the organized withdrawal of a defeated army. It was the panicked flight of a species that had never known fear before meeting humans. For 50 million years, they had been the apex predators of the galaxy. Now they faced extinction at the hands of creatures they had dismissed as primitive mammals. Admiral Morrison stood in the command center of Unity Prime, studying the tactical display that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked swarm-controlled systems, while blue dots showed areas under Council protection. For the first time in 3 years, there were more blue dots than red ones. The tide of war had turned. The human fleet had grown to over 8,000 ships as Earth sent reinforcements through the dimensional gates they had secretly built throughout the galaxy. Council engineers were amazed by the human transportation network that allowed them to move entire fleets across impossible distances in a matter of hours. Major Sam Wilson coordinated the final assault. Preparations from his command ship USS Annihilation. His responsibility was orbital bombardment strategy for the attack on the swarm homeworld. The planet was called Genesis by human intelligence because it appeared to be where the swarm species had first evolved, before spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Genesis was not a normal world anymore. The entire planet had been converted into a massive biological weapon. The surface was covered with living tissue that could generate new swarm ships. The atmosphere was filled with spores that could infect any organic life that came too close. The planet itself had become a creature dedicated to producing more creatures. Captain Emma Davis led the ground assault planning team. Her job was to coordinate the marine forces that would have to fight their way through the planet's defenses to reach the core where the original swarm queen mind was located. It was the most dangerous mission ever attempted by human forces, and everyone knew that most of them would not survive. The assault began with something the galaxy had never seen before. Planet-killer weapons fired from human ships in perfect synchronization. Not the clean energy weapons that Council species used for surgical strikes, but dirty nuclear devices designed to poison entire continents with radiation that would last for thousands of years. The living surface of Genesis writhed in agony as nuclear fire consumed billions of swarm organisms, but the planet fought back with weapons grown from its own flesh. Biocannons the size of mountains fired living projectiles at the human fleet. Atmospheric processors tried to create toxic clouds that would kill anything that breathed oxygen. Captain Davis led the first wave of dropships through the burning atmosphere. Her Marines wore the heaviest armor human technology could produce and carried enough firepower to level a city. They fought their way through. Forests of carnivorous plants and swamps filled with acid that could dissolve metal in seconds. Sergeant Chris Martin was part of the Special Forces team tasked with reaching the planet's core. They moved through tunnels lined with breathing flesh and defended by creatures that had been specifically evolved to kill intruders. Every step forward cost them soldiers, but they never stopped advancing toward their target. Above the planet, Major Wilson coordinated a bombardment that would have been considered a war crime against any civilized enemy. Human ships used chemical weapons to poison the atmosphere, biological weapons to turn the planet's own defenses against it, kinetic weapons to crack the crust and expose the vulnerable core beneath. The final assault on the planetary core was led by Admiral Morrison himself. He had come to finish what humanity had started and to ensure that the swarm threat was eliminated forever. The core chamber was a vast space filled with pulsing organic machinery that controlled every swarm organism in the galaxy. The original Queen Mind was ancient beyond human understanding. It had been alive when Earth was still covered with dinosaurs. It had watched civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy, while slowly spreading its children to consume every world they could reach. Now it faced creatures that refused to be consumed. Morrison looked at the massive organic brain that had orchestrated the deaths of billions of innocent people. He felt no pity or regret as he activated the planet cracker device that would turn the entire world into radioactive debris. The swarm had chosen to be predators. Now they would learn what happened when they met a more successful predator. The death of Genesis sent shockwaves through every swarm organism in the galaxy. Without the central Queen Mind to coordinate their actions, the hive mind network collapsed. Individual swarm creatures found themselves alone for the first time in their species' history. Most of them simply stopped functioning and died. The surviving swarm ships became easy targets for Council cleanup operations. Without central coordination, they could not adapt to new tactics or coordinate their defenses. Within weeks, the last swarm strongholds were eliminated by combined human and alien forces working together. The war that had lasted 3 years ended in 3 months of human involvement. The galaxy was safe but forever changed. Council species had learned that survival sometimes required doing terrible things to terrible enemies. More importantly, they had learned that humans were very good at doing those terrible things. Morrison returned to Unity Prime to find a galaxy that looked at humanity with a mixture of gratitude and fear. The humans had saved everyone, but they had done it using methods that most civilized species found disturbing. The question now was what humanity would do with their newfound position as the galaxy's supreme military power. Ambassador Vex High approached the human admiral on the observation deck of the space station. The same deck where desperate council leaders had voted to contact Earth just months before. Now, human ships patrolled every major trade route, and human bases protected every important world. The ambassador asked the question that every council species wanted answered. The war is over. The threat is ended. When will human forces return to Earth and leave the galaxy to govern itself? Morrison looked out at the stars where human warships maintained their vigilant watch. We came here to fight a war. The war is over. But wars have a way of starting again when people forget how horrible they can be. We will stay to make sure this galaxy remembers. We will patrol these stars to make sure nothing like the swarm ever threatens innocent people again. The ambassador felt a chill that had nothing to do with the space station's climate control. He realized that humanity had not just won the war against the swarm. They had claimed the galaxy as their territory to protect. The council had invited guardians and received conquerors. Morrison turned away from the window and walked toward the human section of the station. His final words to the ambassador were spoken quietly, but carried the weight of absolute certainty. The galaxy is under human protection now. Anyone who threatens the peace we have established will learn why the swarm failed. As the human admiral disappeared into the corridors that now belonged to his species, Ambassador Vexhai understood the new reality. The council had asked for help and received salvation. But salvation had come with a price. The galaxy now belonged to the most dangerous predators it had ever produced. In the depths of space, human fleets continued their patrols. They watched for threats that might emerge from the darkness between stars. They protected civilizations that could not protect themselves. And they waited patiently for the next enemy foolish enough to challenge the species that had turned warfare into an art form. The war was over. Humanity had won. The galaxy was safe, but everyone knew that this was not an ending. It was just the beginning of the age when Earth's children walked among the stars, and nothing in the universe was dangerous enough to threaten them.